Parent Entrepreneur Power, conversation number 116.
Parent Entrepreneur Power.
Wait, what? Entrepreneur Power!
This is the podcast for parents juggling the tough choices required for success in business while putting family first. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Johnson, and I share the ups and downs and dirty truths of profits and potty training while chatting with successful parent entrepreneurs from all walks of life. Are you powered up? Hey there, Power Parents. Guess who? You know who you're listening to, Mary Catherine Johnson. And I have a gentleman with me today that I have been following for a while now. I believe I was introduced to him on Entrepreneur.com. I read some of his articles because, of course, you know me, I'm talking and thinking all about parenting and business. So all of a sudden I was looking at something and there his article was, and it resonated so perfectly that I just had to read more and find out more about him. And this was several months ago now, probably 6 months to 8 months ago now. And I've just been chatting with him here and there, and all of a sudden, boom, we became, I think, Twitter buddies. And here we are. You know, I love it when that happens. So here he is, without further introduction, Jim Joseph. He's the president of Cohn Wolfe Brand Communications. He is an author and a blogger, but you know, most importantly, like the rest of us, he is a dad. So, hey there, Jim, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. And that is like probably the biggest compliment you can possibly give me, is to say that you've read something that resonated and connected. That's just amazing.
Isn't that what we authors, that's what we strive for?
Exactly.
To communicate our heart and to have other people resonate with it.
Exactly.
Yes. So there you go. Check one off. I'm one more. So welcome to the conversation, because really this is a conversation, and I invite people into this conversation who have something to say about the connection and the juggling and the struggling and the successes of being a parent and also being an entrepreneur. So tell me, just to get us started, your once upon a time story. How did you get into this whole gig?
Well, once upon a time, the year was 1998, actually, and I had just come off of a really, really successful career on the client side at Johnson & Johnson and at Arm & Hammer. And I had a 3-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter, and I needed more time. I mean, I was the primary caregiver, and I could not juggle the workload, the travel schedule, the demands, and take care of them. So I walked off the corporate ladder and I started my own agency. And while it appeared at the time, and certainly if you look back at history, it looks like that was such a brave entrepreneurial move. Isn't that amazing? The truth is, I did it so that I could be a dad. And I made it work career-wise, but I did it because I needed to be a dad, and I needed to be around, and I needed to have a really flexible schedule. And this was long before, working from home and technology to help all that. So that was my solution to balancing parenting and career. And fortunately, it worked, and it looks a lot sexier than it actually was, but I did it to be a dad.
So what made the change, though? So we're talking, for 5 years you were a dad, and then you decided to make a change. What caused that?
Well, the demands of career really caused a lot of it. As I progressed higher and higher up the corporate ladder, to use a very old school term, travel got a lot crazier, longer hours. I couldn't necessarily just have a babysitter cover for me anymore. And I just had to make a decision what was going to be the priority. And I've always had an entrepreneurial streak in me. There's no doubt about it at all. So I just, took a big, gigantic gulp and said, I'm going to go for this. And I started my own agency, which really kind of started out as a consultancy and then ultimately grew into an agency. But what I was able to do is I was able to kind of manage that growth as I was managing the kids' growth. So as they got more and more independent and their schedules got longer, I was able to branch out a little bit and build the team and start to travel. So it worked beautifully. I'd hoped it would, and it did. But it was all about balancing the two and just kind of managing demands. As family demands evolve over the course of your children growing up, and as work demands evolve as you take on more and more responsibility, kind of just juggling the two.
Yeah. Well, and you just spoke straight to my heart in there. So I'm going to go with that, but I need to ask, I just don't want to leave this immediately because I'm always curious. We all have a tipping point in our lives in order to make a change. Something makes us tip. We're thinking about it, we're struggling with it, but something finally pushes us over the edge and says, done. Done. I got to do it differently. What was that? Was that a particular trip where something happened? What was it?
It's so funny that you say that because it was honestly Father's Day. And I had to miss a very key Father's Day that I had the kids alone. I was a single dad at the time. I needed to be alone with the kids, and I had to travel unnecessarily. It could have been completely avoided, but my team and my management said we were traveling on Father's Day. And I'll never forget one of the gentlemen that I worked with said that a day alone is Father's Day. And I remember thinking, not for me and not this year. And that was the tipping point. I said, I can't do this. I need to make my family the priority. Yes, I need a career. Yes, I need to earn a living. Yes, I need to support them. That burden's on me. But there are lots of ways to do that. And I can still make the children a priority.
Wow. Wow.
Father's Day.
Yeah. And, I can tell you right now, there are many dads out there who have had that same exact situation happen, but made a very different choice.
And there's no good or bad choice.
No.
It's a very personal choice.
That's right.
That was mine.
That's right. But that's exactly what we're talking about. These are choices. So if that's what you want, you are not stuck. This is not the only path. You can make a different choice. It's so much easier now. Yeah, I get you. 1998 wasn't that long ago, but it was not that easy back then. Flexible schedules, but 4-hour work weeks, all those things weren't there.
No, and to be honest with you, there were even less options for men. Not that women have had it easy by any stretch of the imagination. They certainly don't, and they continue to struggle. We all do. But for a man to take a step off of a career path and say that it's for the children was unheard of. And even dad as a primary caregiver, quite honestly, it was not really spoken about and not really something that you waved a flag about because it wasn't really seen as all that strong. And thank God times have changed because now, parenting of all styles is embraced, all combinations. We live in a wonderful time as a parent.
Yes. And I have to give you some support here because my husband and I, we've been married now, in May, it'll be 33 years.
Wow.
Yes, I was a child
Congratulations.
bride. I was a child bride. I was very young, but no, so we've been married a long time and we waited a long time to have kids. We waited 15 years to be able to have kids.
Wow.
And, when we did that, 1998 was when my first was born. And my husband was the main caregiver because I had the higher paying job.
Yep.
So he stayed home, and luckily he could do that. Here again, it's because he and his dad have a family business, an entrepreneurial family business. He is a tax accountant. So he could do that. He could structure his work life around our son, whereas I couldn't. I was climbing that corporate ladder. I was in blah, 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 this, that, and the other, traveling, but just like you were talking about. So kudos to you. There were people at the time, but not very many. He would go to drop my son off at kindergarten, and the mothers would look at him like, what, who are you? And why are you here? Even to the extent that he brought my son into the bathroom and, went into the bathroom with him, and the principal called him over and said, "Oh, we don't allow men to go into the restrooms with the children." And he's like, this is my kid. What are you talking about? Because it was like, men might be the perverts and the pedophiles that might be going into the, kindergarten bathroom. It's like,
wow,
woman, what are you doing? This is my son. I'm a father. What are you talking? It was so foreign. So I get it.
I had many a teacher, many a doctor, many a dentist, many a mom say, "Where's the mom?
Yeah.
Why isn't mom here? Why didn't mom bring him or her?" And to the point where I had a couple situations where they wouldn't even communicate with me because mom wasn't there, and I had to kind of make a stink about it. And I had primary custody, but the perception was mom raises the children. And again, I got to say, we've grown up a lot as a society, and it's every combination now is hopefully, at least the world I like to live in, is equally embraced and accepted.
Well, New York and California, yeah, we got that covered. I'm in California, so I got it. Maybe it might be different somewhere else. But okay, so now I got to pull right into what you said before, which is your parenting and your entrepreneurial life basically took a parallel path, and a lot of the things that happened in your parenting and as your kids matured, your business matured. Okay. And you were able to spend more time and have a team and all those kinds of things. So now take me through that. So in the beginning stages, obviously any business starting it up is not easy. Right. And when you're taking basically a big risk with your family to say, I'm going to go out on my own and consult myself out. And, it led you to the agency and now led you to being an author and doing other things as well. But in that beginning, how in the world, well, let me ask you this. What skills do you think were most important at that time in order for you to build that and do that while you were a primary caregiver?
It's interesting because when I look back, I don't know what made me think it would work. I mean, honestly, I'm more scared now thinking back than I was at the time. And maybe at the time it was just sheer necessity. So I didn't really have a lot of time to overthink it. But I don't know how I thought it would work.
I know.
Thankfully, it did. And honestly, the biggest skill at the time, which I think is probably still pretty true for entrepreneurs, networking. I mean, I had such a strong network of fellow marketers that I had become close with, working as colleagues, and they were my source of new business. Mm-hmm. So the minute I put my shingle out, so to speak, I contacted them and said, can you give me a project? And those were the days where you could get projects much easier. The agency and the marketing world now is much more contract driven. Yeah. So you got to go through contract negotiation and really go through procurement most of the time. Back then, it was a little bit more kind of mano a mano. Mm-hmm. You could work with people directly. They could give you a project. You got one project, you did well. You got another one. They told a friend, they gave you a project. You did well. You got another one. And the next thing you knew, you got 10 people doing projects for you because you're just keeping up with demand. And that's oversimplifying it, obviously, but that's kind of how it worked. And that was the biggest skill. Yes, I had to be good in marketing. And yes, I had to be creative. But that was kind of table stakes that anybody would need to do that.
Right.
But the networking and the relationship building and, getting people to realize they can count on you no matter what is really what built my business.
Yeah. And what you talk about when you talk about the marketing and the communication and all those things, those are kind of the mechanics of it, right? I mean, it's like the mechanics of doing business, of the mechanics of your industry. You have to know these things. Like a doctor better know anatomy, right? Those are the mechanics of what you need. But like we were talking about before we went on the air, the philosophy part, the part that is much more nuanced, much more personal, is really what allows you to be successful or not, and then how you attack that. So, I mean, I agree with you. When you first start, we're so naive. We just jump in and do it. Yeah, we just jump in. We don't think about it, and it's like we live, eat, breathe, and sleep what we're doing, and it's like there's no other option. So we just do it. But looking back now, I'm pretty cushy. I'm like, I don't know if I want to jump into something brand new and just quit this and go do something. I don't think I want to do that. But yeah, would you agree that it's more like the nuances that you had to, that's what the networking gave you?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, as I heard you say that, it dawned on me, a little light bulb just went on, that it's what I talk about all the time about the difference between a product and a brand. Yeah. In any given category, all of the products are pretty much the same. Toothpaste does the same functional benefit over many, many brands. Cars, you turn them on, they drive you to work, they provide the same function. Right. It's the emotional connection that actually gets you to choose one brand or another. So you might need a product, but you actually want a brand. And I think that's the secret to entrepreneurialism also, is that you're right. Lots of people can provide that same functional benefit, but the emotional connection, the relationships, the trust that you build is what gets people to choose you over and over again.
Love that. You need a product, but you really want a brand.
Right.
You love that. Wow. Yeah, and then now think of it, bring it to the parenting. I always got to do this, got to balance it out and go the other side as well. And that's really what makes different families. I mean, we've seen all kinds of different families. We know, if we've worked in the classroom at all, we've seen kids who are troublemakers, quote unquote, who've been labeled that or whatever, and do things to disrupt and all those kinds of things. And they come from a family that may have a very different dynamic and very different brand, so to speak, than another. And
Right.
how would you mirror that or marry that between the business that you built and the family now that you built?
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, I think you kind of have to also decide what kind of a parent do you want to be. Are you going to be the excuse me, the kind of parent that is, in it and in the game and shaping and molding your children, or are you going to be the kind of parent that's going to kind of give them the tools and let them just kind of run with it? Are you going to be the kind of parent that lets your partner do the heavy lifting and you're going to kind of be supportive, or vice versa? I mean, those are decisions that you have to make. And interestingly, I guess very consciously and very philosophically, to use a word you used a second ago, I just always wanted to be the kind of parent that was very hands-on, yet let them do their thing. So give them the tools, give them the lessons, watch them like a hawk, but let them run, let them stumble, let them be who they are. And as a result, 22 years later, I have two kids that couldn't be more different from each other if I possibly tried. And a lot of parents talk about that.
Yes.
But they are so self-sufficient and so self-real, like they know who they are. They like who they are. Their friends like who they are. They're on their own paths, be it very different paths. Like how does it get better than that as a parent?
It doesn't. And thinking back, it's so funny when I think of my kids when they were 4 and 7. You can't even imagine that day, right?
Not at all.
No,
Yeah,
you have no idea what you're doing right now is shaping that day.
No.
It's crazy. And that brings it right back to the same thing in our business. We had no idea when we were head down, just going at it, that it would shape what we have today. It really.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we don't have, in other words, my youngest son, two of his favorite books right now one of them is called Flatland. And I don't know if you've read that, but or heard of it, but I've
heard of it, yeah.
It's an amazing book. It really, written back in the late 1800s. And basically the plot line is the world is full of two-dimensional creatures. And, however many angles you have, the more angles you have, the higher development you have. So a straight line, and get this, all women are straight lines. Anyway, so that's another issue completely. But anyway, yeah. So, the more angles you have, the smarter you are. So a circle is the epitome of intelligence. Well, a three-dimensional creature drops down into this world, and the two-dimensional people or shapes cannot even see that this thing is three-dimensional because they can only see two-dimensionally. So it is such a profound concept that we are still discussing it, and he read it last year, and now he's reading Einstein's theory of relativity.
Wow.
And he's putting those two
nice
things.
Casual reading.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No big deal. Whatever. I didn't give him the book. He chose it. But he comes and talks to me about it, but talks about it more on a philosophical level, not just in the mechanics of the math. Right. And it's that same thing. We're two-dimensional in the phase that we're in. We cannot imagine the next dimension that our kids are going to go through or our business because we haven't been there. We don't have any frame of reference.
Right. And you can plan all you want, and planning is good. I'm a big proponent of planning, but it only takes you so far. You've got to go with the flow and live in the moment and adjust as you fly.
And that's what you're saying, adjust. So you wanted to be a certain kind of parent, but then as your kids grow and as the whole dynamic changes, you might change that path.
Oh, absolutely.
And one kid might dictate that you become a different kind of parent, right?
Absolutely. You might be a different kind of parent with each kid. even.
Yeah, you might have to be. So anyway, that's enough about that. But the business side, I'm really interested in. So tell me a little bit more about Cohn Wolfe and how that then morphed into you writing articles and books, and tell me more about that path.
Well, it's interesting. I ultimately ended up selling my agency, not so much because I was ready to cash out. I did it as a career move because at that point, my children were much older. They were super busy. Our schedules were much more manageable. And I kind of tapped out in terms of how I was going to be able to grow the agency just because of the dynamics of the industry. So I knew that I needed to get back into like a big agency environment if I was going to keep advancing my career. So I sold my agency not to make money, but actually to get back on a career path. And it worked beautifully. I ended up being acquired by the Publicis Group and became part of the Leo Burnett organization, and then later moved over to the Saatchi & Saatchi organization. So I had a couple different experiences within that network of agencies. But what's interesting is that as I kind of started to come on the other side, if you will, of my children getting older, my business maturing, me becoming less of a doer and more of a helping teams, I just started to have a voice and a point of view that I never had before. I was always stuck in the middle of the work. So my point of view was always about the work. As I started to kind of mature, I guess, I started having a point of view about the industry and about teamwork and about how you should work together and about how you should build brands more in a conceptual way. And just for the heck of it, I started blogging right when blogging was kind of it was before Twitter even. And people read my articles and I was like, wow, somebody actually reads and they comment on it and they like what I have to say. And I started blogging, every couple of weeks and then every once a week and then every day. And then Entrepreneur asked me to start writing for them. And then I said, well, I've been thinking about a book all this time. Let me see if I could write a book. And sure enough, I was able to fill one and able to get it published. And that became a trilogy, actually, all about marketing, but big brand marketing and then small business marketing and then personal branding. And then just this last year, kind of in full circle to your point, I published a book about my journey as a father and how I had balanced all of it at a time when, I was single and actually coming out as gay and then coupled later on. And I never would have been able to write that if I hadn't made it to the other side. So it was a very retrospective look at one person's journey, but everybody's journey, because we all struggle with stuff. We all have obstacles we have to get through. We all face prejudice. We've all got stuff we want to get done. The details are different, but the story isn't so different. So it's just been super rewarding to kind of be on the other side and be somebody who tries to help and inspire, yet still in it every day, still working every day, still helping my kids, still driving a business forward. It's, that part of life hasn't changed. It's just got a little bit more retrospective on it, I guess.
Yeah, and a little more perspective. You're flying a little higher this time.
Right.
Not so much down into, not necessarily ground level, a little bit higher than ground level, but not down into the nitty gritties as much. So you can get a little different perspective.
Right. Well, and there's a whole nother generation of folks that are doing that now.
Yeah.
They're in tune with pop culture and they're in tune with how brands should be marketed. I'm just sort of here to help them and give them guidance and give them tools and, help them shape their careers, much like people did that for me.
Exactly. Isn't it amazing? I'm part of a mastermind group with 3 other guys, actually. The other gal that was on this group just left for other reasons. But so there's 4 of us and I'm the only woman and I'm the oldest. They're all in their 30s. One of them's maybe just broke 40. And I'm just looking at these kids go, and they have no clue because we don't do face-to-face. We just do voice over Skype. And so they have, and of course my picture, I pretty myself up, right? So, maybe I don't have my gray hair hanging out all over the place. So when they found out that I was that I'm 52, they're like, what? They think it's funny. Just, and all the experience that I have from way back that I bring into the online business. it's they don't even, here again, it's a frame of reference. They don't even have an idea of what that would be like because they haven't experienced a world without all this online wonderful stuff.
Right.
So how was that journey, switching from being down in the trenches and now being more philosophical, more looking at the full circle? Tell me first off how that journey was. How did you morph into that? Was it easy? Was it, kind of a natural transition? And then where do you go from here?
Well, that's a big one, right? You know what? It happens so slowly that I don't know that you ever even really notice in yourself how your skills build, but just naturally over time. And I think it was really when I went to Saatchi & Saatchi, probably when I first really saw it in myself, where I had to really go into an advertising agency and really reinvent it because it was so focused in just pharmaceutical marketing. And it was so focused just in the 60-second television commercial. And it was right at a time when the industry was starting to change and it was less about advertising and less about drugs and more about wellness and more about engagement and more about relationship marketing. So I actually renamed the agency from Saatchi & Saatchi Consumer Healthcare to Saatchi & Saatchi Wellness and brought in new team members that understood digital marketing, understood relationship marketing, still could write beautiful storyboards for advertising. That we didn't walk away from that, but just part of a larger picture. Mm-hmm. And it was in that moment, I guess, that I started to realize I'm not the one doing the work anymore. I'm actually the one who is guiding, and I'm the one who's leading. And I needed to have a vision for the agency and a reason to believe and a reason for being. And I needed to convince them to follow that. And and I kind of looked around and I'm like, okay, no one else is going to do this. It's me. And whereas probably every other situation that I had been in up until that point, there were other people doing that, or I was one of a few people doing that. And that's probably part of the natural evolution. So all of a sudden it was me. And I'm the one that's got to okay, here's what we're doing. Here's where we're going. Here's why we're going there. And this is your role in it. And people followed. And we were really successful. And I had to fly up here. I couldn't be down in the weeds, although arguably it probably still was too much because it's still at the end of the day, our work is our product.
We always are, yes.
But I had people worrying about that. And just a natural evolution of skill sets and being able to see through in 30 seconds a business challenge and see through in 30 seconds, what's good and what maybe is problematic about a program idea. That just comes from seeing hundreds over the course of years and getting very comfortable that your point of view is secure and that it's coming from a place of experience. You got to kind of build up that confidence to actually look at somebody in the eye and say, great work, but, that takes a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, and some compassion mixed in there. You don't want to tear them all the way down.
Right.
You want to bring them up so they continue producing what you need them to produce. Let me ask you, at that time when you made that transition, when you changed that particular brand, how old were your kids?
Let's see. My son, I think, was in about 7th grade, and my daughter was a freshman in high school. So getting to the point of being a little more independent. They would come to work with me when they needed to. I've always had a couch in my office. I actually wrote an article about it. Like, what's one piece of advice for balancing work and family? It's like, have a couch, because there's snow days and there's sick days and there's more holidays than we ever imagined getting on the work side. And you got to have a place where you can plant your kids. Yeah. Because work goes on.
Still
and again, a lot of this was before the working at home, convenience. But they rode along with me, and it's interesting because they even now they're 22 and 20. They understand the cycles of the career, and they understand to the extent that they're able to. They understand those periods, and they actually talk about it and look back fondly on. Remember, we used to go to your office, and remember when we would see your advertising on the TV. I included them in all that. as much as made sense.
Yeah, that's definitely a common thread with most of us who are parent entrepreneurs that look at it as more of alternative to the standard way of doing things. And I'll tell you where I came up with that, or where I saw the evidence of that in a second. But I have to bring you back to the reason I asked you how old your kids were is because I sensed the fact that your kids also needed just guidance and not as much diving into the day-to-day.
Absolutely.
And you were able to then see that now the business that you were in needed the same thing. So it's
so true.
It's such a parallel thing, isn't it?
True.
We can't really think about that in our businesses many times until our parenting gets there, because then we have the experience and the kids naturally make us go there, right? We don't have a choice. When they're 7th and 9th grade, you're not going to be in their room doing their homework with them anymore, right?
Nope.
No. But our businesses, we have to make that conscious choice to change that.
Right.
It doesn't happen without us doing it. We can stagnate it by staying in the day-to-day. So it's kind of like sometimes our parenting, the natural progression of our parenting teaches us how to make our businesses progress in the same way.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're so right.
And now you're looking at the exit strategy, right? You've exited your kids. Now you've exited many of those kinds of businesses, and now you're writing.
Right. Writing and actually taking on a much more global role at the agency, which I love. I mean, I travel all the time and travel internationally and work with teams internationally. I never could have done that before. I don't even know if my head could have handled it before, quite honestly, because it was so bogged down in other things at home. Yep. So the exit strategy, if you will, I feel like I've got a good, maybe another 10 years, in the, slugging it out in this business. But in a new dimension.
Yeah.
And very much in an international dimension as I'm learning cultures and team dynamics around the world. But also, I do have the time now to reflect back and to write. And I also teach at NYU. And I very much see that as giving back. I don't know that it necessarily appears that way, but that's how I look at it. Like, that's giving back. When you write and someone reads it and they resonate with it, that's giving back.
Totally.
When you teach the next generation, that's, it's not about money or career. It's about giving back and teaching the next generation how to be more creative, how to be more strategic, how to think about branding from someone who's, had a couple lessons learned through the years.
Yeah, and had to adapt those lessons to the new marketplace, which is global internet-based communication, relationships. You've had to adapt that whole concept of branding and marketing to this new focus.
Right.
Yeah.
And there'll be something new next year.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, our kids will basically create the next thing.
Right.
Whatever it becomes.
Right, exactly.
It'll be virtual realities, I'm sure.
Or some sort of that, right.
Yeah. So I have to say something really quickly because I had in my 100th episode for this podcast, I went back to my previous 99 guests and asked them to interview their children and ask their kids questions about how their kids felt about having a parent as an entrepreneur. And I am not brilliant enough to come up with that idea. My son did. And the only reason we did that was because he asked me to interview him. So that morphed into, how about we have my guests interview their kids? And it was really funny that there were quite a few of the parents that said, you know what? I don't even think my kid knows what I do, or that I'm even an entrepreneur or anything. I still go to the office, go away, do a job, come home, talk about work, and parent in the more old-fashioned, quote-unquote, way. So this entrepreneurial life now has given us opportunities to change that dynamic completely. Your kids are involved in your business. My kids are involved in my business. They know nothing else. They know no other options. And so how is that going to help them create their own opportunities and create the next level of whatever they're doing?
Right.
It's wonderful that you did that. Kudos. I just had to say, wow, yay. You're one of those parents who chose to involve your kids, and that gives them a whole new dynamic. But now I have to be a little bit selfish here. because you just talked about being international and traveling quite a bit. And my family and I are taking our first trip to Europe this summer.
Wow.
Very first trip. Never
Wow.
been to Europe for, of course, not my kids, but definitely not my husband and myself. So we're going to, it's kind of weird. My husband coined it the blood trail. Because we're following our ancestry. So there you go. There's the blood. We're not murdering people.
Oh, I thought maybe we were going to do like a war tour or something.
Yeah, right. No, yeah. It's not about murder. It's not about actual blood spilling. It's about ancestry. So anyway.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So we're going to Norway, and each of us are taking a different part of our ancestry. Each of the kids and my husband and myself are taking a different country in our ancestry, and we are responsible for what we're going to do in that country. So my husband's taking Norway, because he's mostly Norwegian. My youngest son is taking London. My older son is taking Paris, and I'm getting Italy because I'm mostly Italian. So any advice for my first trip to Europe? Any basic piece of advice you can give me? And sorry, Power Parents, but I got this guy on the phone, and I'm going to take advantage of it.
This is going to seem like it's coming out of nowhere.
Okay.
But my most favorite experiences traveling, particularly in Europe, and I learned this when I was on a trip with who was then my partner, now my husband, and his sister and my sister. So we did a sibling trip to Florence, Italy. And when we got there, we didn't really realize that not a lot of places would speak English. And we went to very local restaurants. Like, we did not go to touristy restaurants. And most of the local restaurants didn't speak English, or not well enough. And I would speak Spanish, and they would speak Italian, and we would kind of get along enough, but like, it was very foggy, obviously. So I learned to just say, "What should I have for dinner?" And the waiter or the chef, in some cases, because in some cases they were the same,
Right.
They would just pick my meal for me. And it was such an eye-opening experience because I was having things that I would have never ordered.
Yeah.
And a lot I didn't like and a lot I loved, but it was irrelevant. It was just this experience that these people were giving us what they thought was important. And I now do that all the time when I'm traveling, particularly in Europe. Not so much at business dinners, but like in, personal dinners when I'm out on vacation, I will ask what I should have for dinner. And it is the best way to experience food in other countries because you're experiencing it through their eyes, not through your own.
Yes.
Especially Italy, especially Paris. Like,
that's it.
That's
awesome.
the piece of advice.
That's fantastic because I am very much the most adventurous one of our family in food. So I will do that and I will model that and see where it gets us.
Because you have to just sort of suspend, like, okay, if it ends up not being something I like, it doesn't matter. Mm-mm. It's not about the food.
Right.
It's about the experience. I could have a slice of pizza on the way home if I'm really starving.
That's right.
And I did that a few times. But but it's about the experience, not about hunger.
That's it. And that's exactly what this trip is about, to really experience the culture. So we're doing unconventional things. We're staying in a mostly bed and breakfast, really not very many hotels. It's going to be like Airbnb, a lot of Airbnb, and little farm B&B that we found up in one of the fjords in Norway that basically serves breakfast and dinner. It's a half board, they call it. So you get dinner included, and it's served at 7:00. And if you're not there, you're not going to eat. So
and they're probably you're going to eat what they made, probably.
You eat what they make, and
fabulous.
It's all at a family table. Whoever's there eats, and it's just that's exactly why we want to go. It's all the culture. It's not just going to the tourist place. And now my older one does want to go to Notre Dame because apparently that's the first place where music was actually written down was in Notre Dame. I didn't either. But that's where the first music was actually composed and written down. So he's got to go there because he's a big music guy. So, yeah.
I will tell you, plan a lot of time to go there. The lines that's the one place in Paris that I've always found the lines are really long.
Just to get in?
Just to get in.
Yeah.
But Paris is my favorite city in the world.
Is it?
There's so many. You need to go see the Tomb of Napoleon. You need to do the Champs-Élysées. You need to do the Louvre, obviously, and then just walk around the neighborhoods and and go to the little bistros, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just amazing.
He's 17. He's 6'1". He's already said, because he gets to direct us in Paris. Each of us gets our own place, and
Right.
we are deciding what we're doing. So he's the director of that. So he says, "All right, we're going to be walking around a lot, and all of a sudden, if my nose picks something up, we're turning."
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
go for it. We're behind you. We're going to eat whatever we're going to eat, and because that's it. He's like, food. It's it.
Right. Well, yeah, when you're in Paris, it's food and wine and
Yeah.
some shopping, but food and wine.
Food,
Food and
yeah.
wine and museums.
That's it. Yeah. He's got to go see the catacombs. He definitely
yeah.
has to go. He has to try and scare his little brother as much as possible and, take him down and see skulls and things.
You know what's actually really amazing too, and it's not that far out of the city, is Versailles. It's just,
yes.
oh my goodness. And you can have lunch there. It is such an experience. And they've been working so hard to buy back all the antiques that they lost, during the wars.
Yeah.
And it's now gotten pretty fabulous. It's just
Wow. Yeah,
amazing.
that's what we were checking out and showing him. So I have a feeling we'll just be able to take transportation and go on out there and experience it. It's going to be a blast. We're going to spend about a month out there and just hang out, have fun. Of course, I am taking Cinque Terre. I'm going definitely onto the coast of Italy, and we're just going to relax and enjoy and swim in the Mediterranean and have a great time.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. So yeah. All right. Sorry, guys. Had to take that little detour, but it brings us back though. I can definitely tie it back into what we're talking about, especially when you say, what should I have for dinner? What should I have to eat? That kind of curiosity, that kind of letting go, I think is the number one word I can use. That kind of letting go will get you so far, not just in a trip to Paris or in a place that you don't speak the language, but in parenting and business. If you let go of what you expect and don't hang on so tightly to whatever you're bringing with you, the experiences can be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had a situation where you were able to let go of something, either as a parent or in an entrepreneurial sense, and the experience and the outcome and the success was so much the better for it?
Well, it's interesting because I can think back on, good dad days and bad dad days. And hearing you describe it, when I think about the days where I was just like, I wasn't such a great dad today, or it just didn't go very well, or, I made some mistakes, or I flew off the handle, or I was impatient. Probably, and as I think about it now, I could probably say with certainty that I was wound too tight those days. I was carrying something from work. I was trying to get through the day so I could get to work on a paper that night or something. And I was trying to control everything. And you know what? Children don't want to be controlled. They want boundaries. They absolutely want boundaries. And they want guardrails. And if they don't have that, they get a little haywire. But within those boundaries, they don't want to be controlled. And days that weren't so happy, I was over controlling. And days where I just let it go with guardrails were better days. And I can remember distinctly with my son, as he progressed through his years, he struggled more and more with school. In the beginning, it seemed very easy for him. And then as he progressed through the years, especially like 8th grade, 9th grade, sophomore year, it got very hard for him. And I think it's a few reasons. One, he was becoming much more social, so it just wasn't a priority for him. And secondly, I don't think he ever really learned how to study and how to learn because it came so easy for him. So then when the going got tough, he didn't have any skills. I had to sort of watch that and figure it out and not try to control it, but try to figure it out, and like, okay, what is really going on here? And I would try to tutor him and I would try, and like, it just didn't work. And I got some great advice from a friend who said, get him a peer. Get him a peer he can model after. Get him another guy who's like 2 years older, who like plays lacrosse like he does, who just happens to have the skills of how to study. And that's what I did. And it was like amazing. I had to let it go. I realized it could not be my job to fix him.
That's right.
I just had to give him some help and some tools. And you know what? He's not a great student, but he loves what he does. And he had a great summer internship this last summer in New York. He loved that work. That's what he's striving towards now. He can't wait to get out of college because he wants to go do that work. You know what? Grades are not what's relevant. That's what's relevant.
That's right.
But you can't control it. You can't make it the way you want it to be. And because I did it this way is just not relevant.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Yes, that's exactly it. So now take us through, you talked about tools, you talked about that. What would you say is the most important tool that you've used to create the success you have today?
You know what I have to say? It's the smartphone, without a doubt, and a couple really key applications. There's a file sharing tool that I use called Box that allows me to share files with my colleagues all around the world. And no matter where I am, I don't have to be sitting at my desk. That has become invaluable to me. I mean, I use it all day long, every single day, and on the weekends. That is something that used to be so difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you typed it on the computer to actually share it,
Fax
was yeah.
Yeah.
And then you still had to be physically tied to someplace to get it. It has completely changed my life, and I'm able to move at 10 times warp speed because of things like Box, and because I can have it on my smartphone, not just on my laptop. Right. Invaluable. Wow. Absolutely invaluable.
Fantastic. So, all right, we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I know I could monopolize your time for a lot longer.
Fun. Lots of fun.
Isn't it
Lots
fun?
Of fun.
It's just so amazing when we both have a shared, the experiences bring us together, and our outlook on them brings us together.
Absolutely.
I have to tell you, I have to share this again. There was some meme I saw on Facebook where it was the text was basically to my mother-in-law. And it basically said, don't try and tell me how to parent my kids because I'm living with one of yours and he needs a lot of improvement. And I'm just like, okay, hang on here, ladies. And I had to add to that. And I chose to spend the rest of my life with him. So thank you very much for making him the man he is.
Right.
Hello.
Right.
So we don't always have to bring in the negative parts. Accept him for who he is. You chose him, lady. Deal with it.
And you know what? You're probably not ever going to improve him.
Look at improving yourself, and believe me, your outlook on who he is will change drastically.
Exactly.
That tells you.
Your husband sounds pretty fabulous. He stayed home with the kids at a time when that wasn't so cool. It sounds like very actively in partnership raised them. I mean,
my gosh.
That's amazing for you, amazing for them too.
It was so fun. It's been so fun. And I'm looking now at 17 and 14. I'm looking at that exit for them, and it's a whole other life basically that really is opening up, and you don't realize that's what you're going toward when they're 2 and 5. You don't realize.
And it sneaks up on you. I have to say, everybody told me that this would happen, and I didn't believe them.
Yeah.
But my daughter, went away to college. She went to Penn State, and that separation anxiety was awful. But I got over it because I accept every phase, right? But I'll never forget. I went to my first parents' weekend. And I wasn't able to go on Friday because too long of a drive and I had to work late. So I went on Saturday morning and I got there right about 11 o'clock, picked her up, and we immediately went to breakfast. We went to this diner and we're sitting at the counter on stools. And she's talking, having the most intellectual conversation that I could possibly have with any adult. We were talking about politics. We were talking about gay people. We were talking about marriage. We were talking about parenting. We were talking about work. We were talking about school. And I was looking at her and I was like, who is this? Like, this is a totally different person. And I really like her. Like, if I met her at a bar, we'd be friends. Like, it's such an amazing experience when you get to that point with your kids where you're like, not that you're ever done, but you're like, wow, she has become an amazing person. In and of herself, all by herself. It's, and same thing with my son when he went to that, like, totally different, but I was like, wow, like, I like this guy. He knows what he's doing. He's got his faults like all of us do, but he's even cool about that. It's a great place to be.
Wow. That's amazing. It's all a phase. It's all the next phase.
Yeah.
We're just coming up to the next phase. And
Right.
if I can wake up tomorrow and keep experiencing these phases, I'm a happy woman.
Absolutely.
That's all that matters.
I never really hang on to the phases too long. Like I might mourn them for a minute, but then you got to jump right in, you know?
You do. It's life. Otherwise, you're stuck. Wait. Yeah, I know. You got to enjoy it.
Totally.
Well, Jim, I got to tell you, it has been such an amazing pleasure chatting with you. I
absolutely.
really enjoyed it. I'm so glad. I would love to talk more if we could ever have you on again about your books and dive a little deeper in marketing. Maybe you could come and talk to some of we call ourselves power parents because of what we've been talking about, which is we already have the power in us with the skills that we develop as a parent to build a business.
Sure.
If we survive potty training, we got business.
I always say there is nothing at work that is anywhere near as challenging as raising those two kids.
Yeah.
Nothing. There's like nothing that'll come along that I can't figure out.
Okay, I know you can tell that I had a blast chatting with Jim. It was a great connection. I was so honored that he would basically grace the mic with me, share the mic with me, and, connecting with another parent, building businesses and growing kids who's had the kind of success that Jim has had is just, like I said, it's just an honor. So to find out more about Jim and the articles that he's written, the stuff he's done, the books he's written, all that good stuff, just go to the website, parententrepreneurssuccess.com/PEP116. It'll have all his links there waiting for you. And as always, parent entrepreneurs, us power parents, enjoy the journey. To get powered up for your day, just go to parententrepreneur.power.com and listen to any one of the over 113 episodes we've had so far with amazing entrepreneurs just like you. It might just help you feel like a grown-up again.